Diary of a Wimpy Guy, A Secret from the Past, Kids' Adventure Stories. Written by Jeff Child. Narrated by John H. Feskins. Introduction. Lyric lives in Peacetown. He is crazy about his little blue bird, a finch. He has a lot of fun with his pet, but when the sneaky fowl escapes from his home, he is in a pickle. He was already going in the wrong direction with his life, but now it had become more serious. At first, Lyric is distraught. He wonders if he will ever see his favorite animal again. But when the morning is over, he decides to take matters into his own hands and look for the finch. Follow the funny and unusual diary of a guy who would give anything to get his pet bird back, someone who seems to search the entire village but isn't successful until he realizes he needs to think more deeply about life. Chapter 1. The Finch. It was a warm summer afternoon, and even though the weather was excellent and sunny, my state of mind was worse than it should have been. Maybe I was not to blame, and maybe I was, but whatever the reason, I was in a bad mood. A very bad mood. I hated life. I hated my family. I hated kids and smiles and laughter. I hated the sun in my face. So annoying. Nothing was going the way I wanted. I guess I was just the victim of bad luck and an unfortunate fate that had befallen me. Why did everything have to be so difficult? It was like nobody was interested in me. No one liked me or cared about me. Or did they? I wasn't sure, but I wasn't going to give it a try and find out. It had been months since I had left my room. The food in my fridge and food storage was running out, but I was hesitant to leave my comfort zone. Some people had visited me and told me I was suffering from seasonal affective disorder, whatever that was. It's some kind of depression you get in the winter because of a lack of light or something, but it wasn't even winter, so it didn't make any sense. Well, if they were going to judge me, then they could just take a hike. It didn't matter to me what they thought of me, with their weird diagnoses and the psychological box they were putting me in. I was fine where I was at, and that was the end of it. You might think I had nothing to live for. Well, that's not entirely true. Despite my depressive state, I was always enlightened by the happy chirps of my bluebird, the finch. I was crazy about that bird. I called him Freddy. I am sure he was a male. He could do tricks, like fly in a loop, hop from one stick to another one, or chirp when he wanted some food. It was easy to train him that way, and I thought everything was under control. But then one day, he just disappeared. I don't know what happened, but I saw the little door in the cage wide open, as if he had picked the lock and flew out the window. The window was open too, obviously, but I am certain I wasn't the one who left it open. I stood there, wondering what to do next to get my favorite bird back. Would it help to call him? "Fritz!" I yelled while putting my face outside the window. "Fritz!" Nothing. No chirp, no fluttering, absolutely nothing. I fell backwards in a lazy chair and felt miserable. Why did this happen to me? It just wasn't fair. My life was a mess already, and now I lost the only creature that seemed to care about me. It just flew away, leaving me to myself. There I was, completely alone, feeling sorry for myself. Suddenly, I heard a chirp. I tilted my head and looked outside. There he was. It was Freddy. "You've come back," I said excitedly. "Come in, I won't hurt you. I'll feed you and we can play again." But instead of flying towards me, Freddy flew away. "Hey!" I shouted, and before I knew it, I jumped out of the window. Oh, the sun was so bright, and it was shining in my eyes. I covered my face with my arm to block the sunlight. I saw him again. He was flying towards an area I had never been to. Chapter 2. The View. Freddy the Finch was flying towards the mountains. Higher and higher he went, stopping every so often as if he was beckoning me to follow. I climbed more than I ever had. This was a nice little area, actually. I had never been up here. Well, of course not, considering that it took so much energy to hike up there. "Where are you taking me, Freddy?" I asked, since I understood he was doing this deliberately. A chirp was the response, after which he flew higher again. I can't keep up, Freddy," I said, panting heavily. Freddy had no mercy. He kept going. He was expecting me to walk as fast as he was flying, and I was determined to catch him. He was my best buddy. I didn't want to let him go. Are you kidding me? That was my bird. After a while, we finally reached the edge of the mountain. "Wow," I said as I looked at the impressive view from the top I was standing at. In front of me, the village stretched as far as the eye could see. The valley was vast and extended even beyond my hometown. I loved the sight of the peach trees and strawberry bushes in front of me, covering the orchards next to the road leading to the city hall. It was a beautiful view, and I couldn't get enough of it. It made me think. I had locked myself in my room for so long that I forgot to broaden my perspective. I had been experiencing so much self-pity that I had forgotten there was a whole town around me, with hundreds of people, all with their own problems and stories and adventures. Above the valley was a distant silhouette of other mountains, with snow-peaked tops and a rocky surface on each side. I was imagining what was beyond those borders, and I closed my eyes to see the image of the immense space of the rough nature areas I could explore. I felt relieved. I was happy I got out here. It was breathtaking to just sit at the convenient giant rock in front of the view and stare at the little houses, trying to imagine what it would be like to live in this or that home. I saw farmers, miners, wagons, and cattle going about their business and living peacefully amongst each other. It really was good for me to get some fresh air and watch the horizon from the top, not the bottom. Perhaps this was just what I needed to get out of my shell and see what was out there. Anyway, I sat there for a while until I saw Freddy again. He descended quickly, after which I followed him. Running downhill was a lot easier than struggling to fetch the finch uphill, but I had the feeling that Freddy was flying faster too, sensing that it was easier for me to catch up. Chapter 3: The Factory. I didn't know if this bird of mine was aimlessly flying in random circles, or if there was a purpose to its direction, but either way, I wasn't going to lose him. At the bottom of the hill, the finch flew westward. Where was he going now? He flew through the trees, over signs, and never deviated much from his direction. It was unbelievable, as if he was trying to tell me something. I had to rest. I just had to. It was farther than my legs could carry me. I was exhausted. This blue animal was giving me a workout. I closed my eyes, caught my breath, and looked up. There he was again, as if he were waiting for me. I went in his direction, and he flew off, farther and farther, just beyond the town borders. I arrived at a field in front of a factory and noticed Freddy flew inside. It was a steel factory, with vapors of smoke emerging from the chimneys, shouting men ordering employees, and wagons full of heavy materials going in and out. "Come back, Freddy!" I shouted. Some of the men looked at me for a second or two, but went back to work. I took the side door, making sure I went wherever my beloved bird went. "Excuse me," I said as I bumped into a guy with a helmet. I climbed up the stairs to the coordination room and got a great view of the factory. The busy men blew my mind. They worked like horses. Their bodies were in excellent shape, and the results were remarkable. The steel they produced was well polished, their organizational structure was perfect, and the workers were disciplined and knowledgeable, being completely aware of what they were doing. This too made me think, when was the last time I had a job again? It must have been months, maybe years. No, not years, but I thought it had been about a year since I tried to do something useful or productive with my time. Since the accident, I had been moping around, wasting my life on endless thoughts about my unfortunate circumstances. These men were great. They provided for themselves or their families, made society stronger, boosted the economy, and served others. Their paycheck was the least they should get for their labor. I knew I had talents and time, and at that moment, when I saw all those production processes, I decided to look for work again. If I wouldn't be able to find anything, I could make an attempt to create something beautiful and sell something myself, like having my own business. Either way, I wasn't proud of myself, but I firmly believed I could change. I saw one man hauling big blocks of steel and handing it to another coworker. Another man was looking at drawings of steel shapes and discussing it with another manager. One of the workers in the factory looked at me and asked me what I was doing here. "I'm just looking for my bird. It's a blue finch. Have you seen it?" "I saw a bird fly into the building not too long ago. Check the ceilings," he said. I looked at the ceilings, which had a complicated but functional structure to them. It must have taken hours to put this factory together. Each object was carefully put in place to support the heavy roof and the machines that created the material for houses, wheels, plows, and pans. Never before had I considered the complexity of such a lowly appreciated job, but now I was amazed as I tried to picture all the educated men who contributed to the work. Back to reality, where did my bird go? Aha! It flew out of the factory on the other side. Gotcha, Freddy. Don't think you can escape. I am right behind you. Chapter 4. The Meadows. I left the building. Somebody opened the door for me. "Thank you very much," I said. I don't know why I said it that way. I just did. Oh well. Continuing my chase, my clever bird Freddy led me to the meadows behind the factory. It was a few 100 feet away, but once I got there, I could not believe my eyes. After the two epiphanies in the previous locations, the picturesque sight of the flower fields was another reminder of the pretty world I lived in. The pastel colors of the various tulips, begonias, sunflowers, and dandelions was an unforgettable experience for my eyes and mind, which had been in the dark for so long. I inhaled the fresh scent of the blossoming floras and sighed, feeling vibrant and energized. The soothing sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves calmed my soul. I picked a flower. I don't know why. I was never a big flower enthusiast, but for some reason, being out of my self-made cave made me open my mind and enjoy nature more intensely. I delighted in the smell of the pure flower bud as I thought of the miracle of the plants in the countryside, which sporadically grew without a worry in the world, relying on the environment to take care of them. The feeling was wonderful. I hadn't felt like this for a while. Every tiny flower added to the gorgeous scenery before my eyes. I contemplated the meaning of each and every living thing in the course of life, figuring that even the smallest creatures had their purpose, and that life would be incomplete without each individual. I knew I was unique. I was important, and for some reason I had neglected my potential. I promised myself on that meadow field that I would find more purpose in life, and start doing things that would help me grow, just like the flower. I fell backwards in the tall grass, breathing deeply and peacefully, resting my fatigued body as I enjoyed the balance of the warm sunlight and the soft, cool breeze. I watched as some of the flower seeds were tossed by the winds and were carried to other parts of the fields. I had nowhere to go. I was just happy as a clam, looking at the blue sky and the white clouds, trying to find shapes and counting them like a child counting sheep. But then I came to my senses. I was getting a little dreamy, but I still had my mission to think of. I looked around and spotted the bird on a sunflower. I got up as quietly as I could, sneaking up on him and getting ready to assail him like a lion in the tall grass on its prey. I looked, I clenched my fists, and jumped. Missed. The blue bird was smart. It saw me coming. Bummer. It flew away in a different direction, and my chase continued. Chapter 5. The River. I followed my finch to the area where the meadows stopped. It flew to a big branch on a tree towering over the minor river. I saw the bedrocks in the flowing water, as well as the red sand on the riverbed and the birth leaves on the tree. My bluebird was showing the way to the blue river. I didn't consider myself to be a big philosopher until the bird chase, but after contemplating the tiny significance of a flower seed, a lot went through my mind when I noticed the fast water current. The river was wild but controlled. In my depression, I had always said that I didn't need anyone. I was better off on my own, or so I thought. I was perfectly okay and didn't want any help. But now that I saw the river flow, I was reminded of my own weakness. The human body is so dependent on water. If we don't drink for a few days, we die. It's just a given. I picked up a pebble and looked at the river. Then I swung my arm backwards, twisted my wrist a certain way, and bounced the pebble on the water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Nice. I can do better than that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's too bad. Oh well. Freddie was watching. I knew he believed in me. I bounced another one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Yes! I was being completely spontaneous today. I didn't know what got into me, but I liked it. I was feeling alive and well. I took off my shirt, but kept my pants on. Then I jumped into the freezing water. Wow, it's so cold! I cried out with a smirk on my face. I loved it. I shivered, but it was as if I had let go of the past, as if the accident, the depression, and the loneliness were all gone. Suddenly, something interesting happened. Freddie had decided to fly towards me and land on my head. The water was up to my waist, but my pet bird was sitting on my head. This was it. This was the moment to snatch it. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. I lifted my arms to grab him. Missed again. The funny thing was that it didn't even annoy me. I was okay with it, eager to find out where this silly finch was taking me next. He must have had something in mind, seeing that he deliberately decided to guide me to these locations. At least that's what I thought. Or was it all some big coincidence? Maybe Freddie didn't do anything on purpose, and I just happened to get caught up into these thought-provoking situations. I had no clue, but I was curious where it was flying off to so quickly after the water. I jumped out of the water and looked back one more time, thinking of the natural resource that had inspired me to reconsider my dependence on simple substances such as water. It surely was interesting to go to all these places I hadn't seen in years. Freddie flew higher and higher. What was he up to this time? Chapter 6. The Church Tower. I watched in awe as I saw my finch fly to the highest point in town, the church tower. How I was going to get up there, I didn't care yet. I just wanted to see what the bird was doing all the way over there. I ran towards the plaza, the square in front of the church. A few giant statues of living examples were displayed outside the church, as well as flamboyant decorated leaded glass windows and patterned bricks and rooftop peaks. It was a pretty sight, something a lot of devoted masons had worked on during its construction. I went inside. The atmosphere was peaceful. A serene silence was as overwhelming as an obnoxious noise could have been. It hit me. The purpose of life, the assurance of an afterlife, my commitment to be a charitable human, and the faith I had long ago forsaken, but which had been rekindled by my appearance in this sacred building. Again, I wondered if this bird of mine was up to something, if it wanted to remind me of the things that mattered most. Whatever his motives were, I was feeling a spiritual sense of belonging. I felt special again, and knew there was much worth living for. I pondered those things for a few moments. It felt good to let my mind wander off and forget about my problems. I saw them in a different perspective. However, I was still somewhat focused on finding my favorite finch, ready to jump on it and place it back in its cage, where it belonged. "Hello!" I shouted. I heard an echo. That was fun. "Hello!" I shouted again. "Hello!" the echo answered back. "What's your name?" I shouted. "What's your name?" it echoed. "I'm an idiot." But before I could hear the echo call himself an idiot, which would have been hilarious, right? I heard a voice behind me. "You're an idiot," the man said. What? I asked as I turned around. "You're an idiot," the man repeated. It was the pastor. "Don't you think you're a little loud for being in a church? You're disturbing the peace here, silly." Sorry, Pastor," I said. "It's okay. I forgive you, son. Just keep your voice down for a while." "Thanks, Pastor," I said. But I wanted more. It had been a while since I talked to people. "Hold on," I said. "I have a question. What do you think the best way is to get your life back on track after having been down for a while?" "Well, that depends," the pastor said. "I don't think I should tell you what to do since everyone's circumstances are different, but it always helps to pray and to ask forgiveness for your wrongs. We all have a need for progress." "Yeah, I know. I've just been throwing my life away for a year or so. I never came outside and I was feeling sorry for myself." "Then I suggest you find out what your passion is and start doing something to break that cycle of laziness," the pastor answered. "Perhaps serving others would be a good way to start." He was right. I had to start doing something and help others. I would figure out a way to do that sometime in the near future. But for now, I still wanted my bird back. "Thanks, Pastor. I'll think about it," I said. Where did that animal go? I waited until the pastor was gone. He walked around the corner of a different room, after which I snuck into the hallway. A giant winding staircase was going all the way to the bell tower. If there was any chance of finding my finch, it would be through here. I ran up the stairs and arrived at the bell tower. The bells were bigger than I was. They looked magnificent. Some sacred symbols referring to scriptural passages were written on the walls. The view on the village was pleasing to my eyes, which I noticed when looking outside the windows. "That's Freddie," I blurted out. He was sitting on a ledge on an angelic statue on the roof. "Hey, you," I said. "Why are you trying to get away with me? Are you trying to show me something? Are you trying to help me?" He chirped, and somehow I hoped my pretty bird really understood me. But whether he did or not, I was going to grab him and bring him home. I had had a spiritual awakening of some sort, and I was certain that this was the end of it. I leaned over and reached out with my arm. No! I missed again. Freddie flew off, this time downward, down to the village homes. Crazy bird, what does it take to fetch you? Chapter 7. The Neighbor's House. Instead of following my pet immediately, I just watched from the rooftop, the highest point in town, and tried to see where it was going. My finch became smaller and smaller, and I hoped it wouldn't go much farther or I would lose sight of it. There, I marked the house in my mind that it landed on. That's where I needed to go, that house over there. I ran down the stairs and through the church, accidentally knocking over the candles in the pastor's hands. Ouch! Sorry, Pastor, I'm in a hurry, I said as I flashed by. As I opened the church doors and ran outside, I think I heard him sigh and mumble in the distance. He really is an idiot. I didn't care. I knew I was being a little childish and clumsy in his building. I'm sure he was okay with it. I ran and ran. I knew I would recognize the home the bird flew to. I knocked over another person's, things? No idea what they were. I was too rushed. And arrived at the right location. I knew this place. It was my neighbor's house. I looked for my bird but couldn't find it. Then I heard another chirp. The window was open. It must have gone inside. I knocked on the door. No answer. Again. Nothing. I carefully pushed against the door and it opened up. When I walked inside, I noticed the house was empty. Wasn't this where my neighbor lived? I walked to the table in the living room. I saw the painting on my wall. It was my dad. What was going on here? Then I remembered. It all came back to me. I had put away what happened in the back of my mind, trying to cope with the loss of my father. The accident. It was at work at the steel factory. My mother had died long before then, but my dad would drop me off at school every day when I was a kid before heading to the factory. I had grown up. My dad was always there for me, even later in my 20s, but one day he didn't return. I was worried. I had walked up and down to the factory several times trying to find him, but with no luck. When I came home, guards from the authorities were standing at my door. They asked me if they could come in. They told me what happened at my dad's job. "I'm terribly sorry, young man, but we have sad news. Your father was moving around steel plates outside the building when a creeper attacked the factory. You know, one of those weird green creatures that we find in the vicinity sometimes. We don't know why. We just think it panicked, but we have no idea where it came from. Your father tried to protect others and pushed someone away to prevent a giant steel bar from dropping on him. You can be proud of him. He saved that man's life, but he lost his own. Again, I am sorry for your loss." As I stood there in my neighbors, I realized that my dad had been my neighbor since my 18th birthday. He had bought the small house adjacent to his, making sure I could always come over and ask for anything I needed. Since the accident, however, the house had been empty. Trying to forget, I pulled back, quit my job, and pretended nothing was wrong. "Dad," I sobbed, as I looked at the beautiful painting a professional had made of his face. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I have been a slob, a no-good layabout. I have locked myself away from the world because I couldn't face the fact that I lost you." I knew nobody was there, but somehow I believed there was a chance my dad could hear me. I cried for a good 2 minutes and sat down on the worn couch in the corner, processing the reality of my loss in my mind. Suddenly, I heard a chirp. "Freddie," I said, as I watched my favorite pet fly to me and sit on my shoulder. I didn't even try to catch him anymore. It felt like he would follow me home, and he did. I walked to my own home, the one next door, and simply put him back in his cage. Finally, I had him back, my favorite finch, the only one I had relied on in the past year. Chapter 8. Reunited. The next day I had renewed energy. Freddie the Finch was doing tricks again. He flew back and forth from one corner of the room to the other. He chirped and flapped his wings. It was helping me to be in a cheerful mood. After a little playing around, I took initiative. I went to the village and contacted some construction workers, and within a month, the two houses were built as one house. They opened up a wall, attached a new one, and worked for hours on the new floor and the sturdy ceiling between the two homes. It was amazing what they could do in so little time. The unified house became my favorite place. I always had the curtains open from that point on, allowing lots of light to come into the rooms. I visited with people in the community, making new friends. I attended an hour of church every week, although I have to admit that I sometimes fell asleep during the sermon. And I got a new job. I started a successful business and opened a new pet store in town. Because of all these things, I knew my father would have been proud of me. However, let me make one thing clear. Yes, I sold lots of animals through my new pet store, but there was one animal I never sold, my favorite blue finch, Freddie. The end.